The holding cell aboard the Crixian warship hummed with an ominous energy that made Commander Marcus Vale's skin crawl. His captors had stripped him of his uniform, leaving him in a simple gray jumpsuit that did little to ward off the biting cold. The cell's crystalline walls pulsed with an eerie purple light, a constant reminder of the alien technology that kept him imprisoned. High Inquisitor Zaravek stood before him, her silver-scaled skin reflecting the harsh lighting. Her 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, studied him with cold calculation. Behind her, 2 Crixian guards stood at attention, their biomechanical armor making them look more machine than living being. "You continue to resist, Commander Vale," Zaravek said, her translator converting her sibilant speech into crisp standard English. 3 days of neural extraction, yet you reveal nothing of value about Earth's defenses. Marcus managed a weak smile, though it pulled at his split lip. "Then maybe you should let me go. Clearly, I'm not worth the effort." The High Inquisitor's upper eyes narrowed while her lower pair remained fixed on him. "Your humor, like your species, is primitive. Yet there is something about you." She leaned closer, her head tilting with reptilian precision. "Something that makes my scales itch." Marcus felt it then, a familiar warmth in his chest, a sensation he'd spent years suppressing. He forced it down, just as he'd been trained. Now wasn't the time. Not yet. "Just a simple soldier," he rasped, "doing his duty." Zaravek's hand shot out, faster than any human could move, gripping his jaw. Her claws dug into his skin, drawing pinpricks of blood. "Let us test that claim." She pressed a crystalline device against his temple. Pain exploded through Marcus's skull, and with it came the memories he'd fought so hard to contain. He was 12 again, standing in his grandfather's study. The old man's hands trembled as he placed an ancient medallion around Marcus's neck. "There's something in our blood, boy," his grandfather whispered. "Something older than Earth itself. When the time comes, you'll know." Marcus gritted his teeth, trying to block the memory, but the device pushed deeper. He was 25, on his first deep space mission. The strange dreams had started, visions of massive creatures soaring between the stars, their wings spanning the void itself. He'd dismissed them as stress-induced hallucinations. "Interesting," Zaravek murmured. "Your mind holds more than military secrets." The pain intensified. Marcus felt blood trickling from his nose, but he couldn't move, couldn't break free from the memories. The cave on Mars, discovered during a routine patrol. Ancient glyphs that seemed to move when he looked at them. The way they had glowed at his touch, responding to something in his blood. "Stop," Marcus gasped, but it wasn't just pain in his voice now. It was fear, fear of what would happen if they saw too much, if they understood what he truly was. Zaravek's expression shifted to one of triumph. "Now we're finding something worthwhile. Push harder," she commanded her technicians. The device hummed louder, and Marcus felt something inside him begin to crack. Not his resolve, something deeper, more primal. A seal that had been placed on his true nature, waiting for the right moment to break. His grandfather's final words, spoken on his deathbed, "They'll return, Marcus. The dragons remember their emperor. When they come, you must be ready." The warmth in his chest erupted into an inferno. Marcus's eyes snapped open, but they were no longer their usual brown. They blazed with golden light, pupils contracted to reptilian slits. The crystalline walls of his cell began to vibrate. Zaravek stepped back, all 4 eyes widening in genuine fear. "What are you?" Marcus felt the ancient power surging through his veins, burning away his restraints like paper. When he spoke, his voice resonated with something ancient and terrible. "I tried to warn you." The ship's alarms began to wail as space itself seemed to tear open around them. Through the cell's viewport, massive shapes emerged from hyperspace, creatures of impossible size and beauty, their scales shimmering with starlight. Dragons, but not the simple beasts of Earth legend. These were beings of cosmic power, guardians of an empire that spanned galaxies. Marcus rose from his chair, his body emanating golden light. The medallion his grandfather had given him, which the Crixians had dismissed as a simple trinket, burst into brilliant radiance. "I am the last of the Dragon Emperors," he declared, his voice carrying the weight of ancient bloodlines and terrible purpose. "And you have awakened what should have remained dormant." The largest of the dragons, scales black as the void and scattered with points of light like stars, turned its massive head toward the Crixian warship. Its eyes, burning with the same golden fire as Marcus's, fixed on its target. The dragon's thoughts resonated in Marcus's mind, clear and powerful. "We have found you at last, my emperor. The galaxy will remember why they once feared the dragon throne." As alarms blared and chaos erupted throughout the ship, Marcus Vale, no longer just a commander, no longer just a man, stood in his shattered cell and faced his destiny. The age of hiding was over. The Dragon Emperor had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Crixian warship shuddered as Marcus strode through its corridors, his footsteps leaving scorched impressions in the metal decking. Every door slid open at his approach, the ship's systems responding to an authority far older than their programming. Behind him, High Inquisitor Zaravek and her guards remained frozen, caught between terror and awe. But it wasn't their fear that consumed Marcus's thoughts, it was the memories, now flooding back in an unstoppable torrent. The neural extractor hadn't just broken the seal on his powers, it had shattered the barriers holding back the truth of his heritage. 6 months earlier, Marcus stood in the ruins of the Martian cave complex, his expedition team long since evacuated after the seismic event. But there had been no earthquake. The tremors had come from something awakening, something responding to his presence. The glyphs on the wall pulsed with increasing intensity, and as he watched, they began to rearrange themselves into patterns he somehow understood. "You've finally found your way here," a voice echoed through his mind. From the shadows emerged a figure that defied reality, a woman with scales like polished opal, her eyes holding the wisdom of millennia. "I am Naira, guardian of shadows, and I have waited centuries for you, young emperor." Marcus had backed away, his military training warring with instincts he didn't understand. "I'm a soldier, not an emperor." Naira's laughter was like wind through crystal. "You are both, and so much more. Your ancestors ruled not just worlds, but the spaces between them. The dragons were their companions, their guardians, their friends. Until the great betrayal forced us into hiding, scattered across the galaxy, waiting for one with the old blood to awaken." Before Marcus could respond, 3 more beings materialized from the darkness. Each was as magnificent and impossible as Naira, but distinctly different. Thalasser, with scales like storm clouds and lightning crackling between his horns. Kaler, whose golden form seemed to radiate pure light. And Vex, whose crimson scales shifted like living flame. The 4 guardians, Naira continued, bound to the dragon throne since the first emperor raised his banner among the stars. "We have watched your bloodline, protected it, guided it across generations, waiting for one strong enough to reclaim their heritage." Marcus felt the medallion his grandfather had given him growing warm. "My grandfather," he knew. "He was a keeper of the legacy," Thalasser rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. "But he did not carry the spark. You do. We felt it kindle the moment you were born." The cave filled with shifting images, stars and planets, battles and triumphs, the history of an empire that had once spanned the galaxy. Marcus saw massive dragon fleets soaring through the void, their riders wielding technologies that seemed like magic. He saw great cities that sprawled across entire planets, where humans and dragons lived in harmony. And he saw the betrayal, the Crixian Empire's first rise, their jealousy of the dragon-human alliance leading to a devastating sneak attack. The emperor of that time had sacrificed himself to ensure some of his people would survive, sealing away their power and scattering them across the stars. "Earth was our final sanctuary," Kaler explained, his light pulsing gently. Your people's legends of dragons? Echo of memories they couldn't quite forget. We've been waiting, watching, knowing the Crixians would eventually find us again. Which they have, Vex growled, flames dancing along his scales. Their ships orbit your world even now, thinking they face simple humans with primitive technology. They don't realize they've stumbled upon their ancient nightmare. Marcus's head spun with the implications. You want me to fight them? I don't know how to be what you're describing. You already are what we describe, Naira said softly. The knowledge is in your blood. Let us show you. What followed was 3 months of intense training, hidden from both his military superiors and the approaching Crixian fleet. The Guardians taught him to access abilities that seemed impossible, commanding energy fields that could reshape matter, communicating across vast distances with thought alone, even manipulating the fabric of space itself. More importantly, they taught him about the dragon bond, the ancient connection between his bloodline and these cosmic beings. It wasn't control or domination, but a partnership forged in mutual respect and shared purpose. The dragons were not servants but equals, each bringing their own wisdom and power to the alliance. Marcus learned of the other dragon clans scattered throughout the galaxy, hiding in plain sight as spatial anomalies or cloaked behind advanced technology. They will answer when you call, Thalasser assured him. The dragon bond echoes across space and time. They remember the throne, and they hunger for justice. The training culminated in his first flight among the stars, riding Vex's massive form through the void between worlds. No spacecraft, no matter how advanced, could match the raw power and grace of a cosmic dragon in flight. Marcus felt the solar winds against his skin, protected by fields of energy that were equal parts science and sorcery. This is what they fear, Vex's thoughts resonated in his mind. Not just our power, but our unity. Humans and dragons together represent something they can never achieve, perfect harmony between order and chaos, technology and nature, thought and action. The memory shifted back to the present, to the Crixian warship where Marcus now stood at a viewport, watching as more dragons emerged from hyperspace. Each one was unique, representing different elements and aspects of cosmic power. Their combined presence made the ship's gravity generators fluctuate and its sensors overload. High Inquisitor Zaravek found her voice at last. The legends, they were true. The Dragon Empire wasn't just propaganda. No, Marcus agreed, his eyes reflecting the light of gathering dragon fire. It wasn't. And now you face a choice, Inquisitor. Warn your people. Tell them what you've awakened. Give them a chance to retreat, to surrender, to find a way to coexist. Because if they don't... He turned to face her, and for a moment his form seemed to shift, taking on aspects of the great beings gathering outside. If they choose to continue this war, they will learn why even time itself remembers the reign of the Dragon Emperors. The dragons roared as one, a sound that transcended physical space and echoed in the minds of every being for light years around. The Dragon Emperor had returned, and the galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what that return would mean for all civilization. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council hung suspended in space, a massive structure of crystalline alloys and energy fields that sparkled like a captured star. Representatives from 100 worlds sat in rising tiers, their attention fixed on the unprecedented scene unfolding before them. Marcus Vale, the newly revealed Dragon Emperor, stood at the center of the chamber, flanked by his 4 guardians in their humanoid forms, an ability that had shocked even him when he first witnessed it. The Crixian threat is greater than any of you realize, Marcus declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast space. They don't seek mere conquest, they want to reshape the very fabric of our galaxy. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. A Centaurian delegate, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with skepticism, rose to speak. These claims of ancient empires and cosmic dragons, they sound like myths meant to frighten children. Where is your proof? Naira stepped forward, her opal-like scales shimming even in her more subtle form. The proof is written in the very stars, counselor. Or have you never wondered why certain spatial anomalies move with purpose? Why some nebulae resist all attempts at scientific categorization? With a gesture, she conjured a holographic map of the galaxy. Points of light began to illuminate across its spiral arms, hundreds of them, then thousands. Each light represents a hidden dragon clan. For millennia, we have watched and waited, disguising ourselves as natural phenomena. The Horsehead Nebula? A gathering of the Storm Drake clan. The Carina Pillar? Ancient dragon-forged technology, still maintaining its vigil. The chamber erupted in chaos as the implications sank in. Marcus let them process it, his mind reaching out through the dragon bond to feel the stirring of ancient powers. All across the galaxy, clan after clan was awakening, responding to the call of their emperor's return. But not everyone was convinced. Ambassador Thex of the Commerce Worlds rose, his cybernetically enhanced voice cutting through the din. Even if we accept this fantastic story, what proof do we have that the Crixians pose such a dire threat? They have honored their trade agreements with my people for centuries. Show them, Marcus commanded softly. Thalasser stepped forward, lightning crackling between his horns. The holographic display shifted, showing a massive structure hidden in deep space, a lattice of dark energy that seemed to drink in the light of nearby stars. This is what our long-range scouts discovered, Thalasser explained, his voice rumbling like approaching thunder. The Crixians have spent centuries building a quantum forge capable of rewriting the fundamental forces of our universe. They believe they can reshape reality itself, making themselves the dominant life form across all dimensions. The images shifted, showing simulations of what would happen if the forge was activated. Entire sectors of space would be altered, their physical laws rewritten. Any life form not specifically engineered to survive in the new paradigm would simply cease to exist. It's genocide on a cosmic scale, Kaler added, his golden form pulsing with barely contained anger. Not just of current life, but of all potential life that might ever evolve in those regions. The chamber had grown deathly quiet. Even the most skeptical delegates couldn't dismiss the evidence before them. Marcus felt the shift in the room, fear giving way to the first stirrings of resolve. We offer you a choice, he continued. Stand with us. Join the alliance of dragons and free peoples. Together, we can stop this threat before it's too late. And if we refuse, a voice called out from the shadows. A figure stepped forward, Lord Regent Malaxis of the Outer Rim Confederacy, his black armor absorbing light like a void. Then you will have chosen the side of oblivion, Vex growled, flames dancing in his eyes. The Dragon Empire doesn't seek subjects, Regent. We seek allies. Malaxis laughed, a sound like grinding metal. Pretty words from beings who once ruled through force. How do we know you won't simply reclaim your ancient throne once the Crixians are defeated? Marcus met the regent's gaze steadily. Because unlike the Crixians, we understand that true power comes from unity, not dominance. I don't want to rule the galaxy, I want to preserve it. As if in response to his words, a new presence made itself known. Through the massive viewport behind the council seats, a shape emerged from hyperspace, a dragon of such immense size that it dwarfed the council station itself. Its scales were like liquid silver, and its eyes held the wisdom of eons. The Ancient One, Naira breathed. The first dragon to bond with humanity. The Ancient One's consciousness touched every mind in the chamber, its thoughts clear and powerful. I remember the First Empire, and its fall. I remember the ages of hiding, of watching younger races grow and stumble and rise again. The choice before you now is the same choice we faced eons ago, stand together, or fall alone. The effect was electric. One by one, delegates rose to pledge their support. Ships, troops, resources, all would be needed for the coming conflict. Even Malaxis, after a long moment, gave a grudging nod of acceptance. But as Marcus coordinated with his new allies, a subtle warning rippled through the dragon bond. Somewhere in the chamber, someone was transmitting everything to the Crixians. The enemy already knew their plans. Vex's thoughts touched his mind. Let them know. Let them understand what rises against them. Fear can be a powerful ally. Marcus nodded slightly, but his heart was heavy. The gathering storm would break soon, and when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. He could only hope that what rose from the ashes would be worth the coming sacrifice. As the council session ended, the Ancient One's final thoughts echoed in his mind. The true test of an emperor is not his power, but his wisdom in using it. Remember that, young one. The decisions you make here will echo through time itself. The storm was gathering. The dragons were returning. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Crixian Quantum Forge continued its ominous countdown to apocalypse. The battle for the Cassiopeia sector turned space itself into a canvas of devastation and beauty. Dragon fire clashed with quantum weapons, creating auroras that stretched across entire solar systems. Marcus, astride Vex's massive form, led the charge against the Crixian fleet center, his consciousness linked with thousands of dragons through the ancient bond. They're adapting to our tactics, Thalasser warned, his storm cloud form crackling with lightning as he swept past a formation of enemy cruisers. The Quantum Forge's energy signature is changing. Marcus felt it too, a distortion in reality that made his enhanced senses scream in warning. The Crixians weren't just fighting back, they were accelerating their plans. The Forge wouldn't need months to reach full power, at this rate, they had days at most. Squadron leaders, fall back to Point Theta, he commanded, his thoughts reaching every dragon and allied ship in the sector. They want to draw us in. Let's show them why that's a mistake. The allied fleet performed a synchronized retreat, dragons and ships moving in perfect harmony. The Crixian fleet pursued, just as planned. As they crossed the invisible threshold, Naira emerged from her hiding place in a nearby nebula, leading a force of shadow dragons that had been cloaked from all sensors. Now! Marcus ordered. The trap was sprung. Dragons emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their combined energy signatures creating a massive gravity well that caught the Crixian fleet in an inescapable vice. But even as their ships were crushed, Marcus saw something that chilled him to his core. The Crixian flagship was different, larger, more organic, its hull rippling with patterns that seemed almost draconic. Impossible, Kaler breathed, his golden form dimming slightly. They couldn't have. But they had. The flagship split open like a chrysalis, and from it emerged a horror that defied comprehension, a synthetic dragon, its form cobbled together from stolen technology and forbidden science. Its scales were black holes given form, its eyes burned with antimatter, and its very presence seemed to warp the laws of physics. At its head stood a figure Marcus recognized from intelligence briefings, High Commander Xerxes, the Crixian Empire's greatest warrior. But he was no longer purely Crixian. Cybernetic enhancements merged with dragon DNA had transformed him into something new, something that should not exist. Did you think your kind were the only ones who could bond with dragons, Emperor? Xerxes's voice boomed across space itself. We learned from our ancient defeat. We evolved. And now we will show you true power. The synthetic dragon opened its maw, unleashing a beam of pure entropy that cut through the allied fleet like paper. Ships and dragons alike disintegrated, their very atoms unraveling under the impossible weapon's touch. Fall back. Marcus commanded, but Vex had other ideas. No, the fire dragon growled. We end this now. Without warning, he charged straight for the abomination, his flames burning hot enough to ignite the very vacuum of space. Marcus felt the power building within him, the full strength of his heritage responding to this ultimate threat. The medallion around his neck grew white-hot as ancient knowledge flooded his consciousness. He understood now why the original Dragon Emperors had been so feared, and so necessary. Guardians, he called out. To me. The four original Guardians moved as one, taking positions around him and Vex. Energy began to flow between them, not just power but something more fundamental, the very essence of their bond, the connection that had first united dragons and humanity. Xerxes saw what they were attempting. His synthetic dragon launched another entropy beam, but this time it met a shield of pure golden light, Kaler's contribution. Lightning from Thalasser formed a lattice of counterforces, while Nyra's shadows absorbed and redirected the excess energy. Marcus stood on Vex's back, no longer merely human. His form shifted between states, man and dragon, matter and energy, past and future. The dragon bond reached its peak, and for a moment, he was everything at once, every emperor who had ever lived, every dragon who had ever soared, every moment of their shared history. "You understand nothing of true power," he told Xerxes, his voice resonating with the strength of ages. "Power isn't something you take or build or steal. It's something you earn through trust, through sacrifice, through understanding that you are part of something greater than yourself." The synthetic dragon's next attack faltered as its systems encountered something they couldn't analyze or counter, the pure, unfiltered power of the dragon bond. Marcus raised his hand, and with it rose every dragon in the sector, their combined might focusing through him like a lens. "This is why we ruled," he declared. "Not because we were strongest, but because we understood that true strength comes from unity." The battle that followed would be spoken of for generations. Dragon fire met quantum weapons. Ancient magic clashed with hyper-advanced technology. The very fabric of spacetime buckled under the forces being unleashed. But in the end, it came down to a simple truth: no artificial bond could match the power of one forged through millennia of trust and friendship. The synthetic dragon began to break apart, its stolen power turning inward, consuming itself. "Impossible," Xerxes screamed as his creation collapsed around him. "We perfected the formula. We had all the components. Except the most important one," Marcus replied as the combined might of the true dragons bore down on their fallen mockery. "A dragon chooses its partner. They cannot be forced, cannot be copied, cannot be manufactured. That's what you never understood." The synthetic dragon exploded in a burst of antimatter and broken dreams. The Kryxian fleet, seeing their ultimate weapon destroyed, began a chaotic retreat. But Marcus knew this wasn't the end, it was barely the beginning. The quantum forge still waited in the darkness between stars, counting down to reality's end. And somewhere out there, the Kryxian leadership was undoubtedly preparing another desperate gambit. As the Allied fleet regrouped, counting their losses and tending to their wounded, Marcus felt the weight of what was to come. They had won this battle, but the war's true climax still awaited. The Ancient One's words echoed in his mind, the decisions he made now would echo through time itself. Looking out at the battlefield, watching dragons and ships working together to rescue survivors and repair damage, he felt a fierce pride. This was what the Dragon Empire had always been meant to be, not conquerors, but protectors. Not rulers, but guardians of life itself. The final battle approached. The quantum forge had to be stopped, the Kryxian leadership had to be dealt with, and the galaxy's future hung in the balance. But for the first time since accepting his heritage, Marcus truly believed they could succeed. Because he finally understood, he wasn't just the Dragon Emperor. He was the living proof that different species, different philosophies, different ways of being could come together and create something greater than the sum of their parts. The war would end, one way or another. But its lesson would echo through eternity: true power comes not from dominance, but from harmony. Not from fear, but from trust. Not from control, but from cooperation. And that was a power worth fighting for. The quantum forge hung in the void like a twisted constellation, its dark lattices absorbing starlight and hope alike. The massive structure pulsed with ominous energy, each beat bringing reality one step closer to unraveling. Before it floated the remains of the Kryxian armada, thousands of ships gathered in a last desperate defense of their grand design. Marcus stood on the command deck of the Allied flagship Luminous Dawn, watching tactical displays track the movement of both fleets. Dragons soared through space alongside warships, their combined forces representing every major civilization in the known galaxy. Even the Outer Rim Confederacy had committed their forces, Regent Malaxis finally accepting that extinction made no distinction between old enemies and friends. The Forge's containment fields are at critical levels, Naira reported, her opal scales dimmed with concern. They're going to activate it early. They know they've lost, Thalasser rumbled. This is spite, nothing more. Marcus felt the truth of it through the dragon bond. The Crixian leadership had abandoned their original plan for controlled reformation of reality. Now they simply wanted to tear everything down, believing that whatever emerged from the chaos would be better than accepting defeat. All forces, Marcus broadcast across the combined fleet, this is the moment everything has led to. Not just this war, but millennia of history. Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for the very nature of reality itself. He turned to his 4 guardians, each in their humanoid form for the cramped confines of the bridge. Are you with me? Until the stars burn out, Vex answered, speaking for all of them. Marcus nodded, then reached out through the dragon bond. Across space, thousands of dragons and their allied ships responded, moving into attack formation. The plan was desperate, perhaps impossible, but it was all they had. Begin the assault. The battle erupted like a new Big Bang, reality itself groaning under the forces being unleashed. Dragons breathed streams of elemental power while capital ships launched salvos that could crack planets. The Crixian fleet responded with weapons that bent physics and twisted probability. But something was wrong. The Quantum Forge's energy signature was fluctuating wildly, its power growing faster than anyone had predicted. My Emperor. The Ancient One's voice cut through the chaos. The Forge, they've linked it directly to their hive mind. It's drawing power from their collective consciousness. Marcus saw it then, every Crixian in the enemy fleet was being drained, their very essence feeding the Forge. They were sacrificing themselves to ensure their weapon would destroy everything. We need to get closer, he declared. Guardians, to me. He transformed without conscious thought, his human form shifting into something that combined the best of both species. Great wings of energy spread from his back, his skin taking on a metallic sheen while his eyes blazed with dragon fire. The Guardians assumed their true forms around him, and together they shot toward the Forge like avenging comets. The Crixian ships concentrated their fire, but they couldn't match the speed and coordination of beings who had evolved to dance between stars. Marcus and his Guardians wove through the barrage, retaliating with powers that had been ancient when the first Crixian ships rose from their homeworld. They reached the Forge's outer shell, but up close, the situation looked even more dire. The structure was breaking down at the quantum level, reality fracturing around it like cracks in glass. Even if we destroy it now, the cascade reaction will still trigger, Kaler warned, his golden form dimming as he analyzed the energies involved. We need to contain it somehow. Marcus felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him. He remembered his grandfather's words, his training with the Guardians, everything that had led him to this moment. And suddenly, he understood what had to be done. The Dragon Bond, he said quietly. It doesn't just connect us, it's a framework for reality itself. A pattern older than the stars. The Guardians realized what he was suggesting. My Emperor, no. Naira protested. The strain would destroy you. Not alone, Marcus corrected her. But together? With every dragon in the galaxy linked through the bond? We might just be strong enough to contain the reaction and redirect it. Before they could argue further, he reached out through the dragon bond, connecting with every draconic mind in range. Through them, he touched their human and alien partners, drawing on the strength of unity that had made the original Dragon Empire great. The Ancient One's consciousness joined the link, bringing with it the weight of eons. So it ends as it began, the eldest dragon mused. With sacrifice and hope. Marcus felt the power building, not just energy but something more fundamental, the basic forces that held reality together, channeled through beings who had evolved to surf solar winds and dance between dimensions. The quantum forge reached critical mass, reality beginning to unravel around it. But as it did, a new pattern began to form, a lattice of dragon fire and stardust, of ancient magic and modern physics, of every force that bound the universe together. Marcus stood at the center of it all, no longer just human or dragon but something transcendent. Through him flowed the combined might of every dragon in the galaxy, their power focused through the lens of human consciousness and determination. The forge exploded, releasing enough energy to rewrite the cosmos. But instead of destroying reality, it met the pattern created by the dragon bond. Matter and energy, space and time, all of it flowed through the new framework, not destroying the universe but transforming it in subtle ways. When the light faded and normal space reasserted itself, the forge was gone. In its place floated a new nebula, its clouds forming patterns that looked suspiciously like dragon scales. Marcus hung in space, supported by his guardians, exhausted but alive. Through the dragon bond, he felt the changes rippling through reality, small but significant. The boundary between magic and science had grown just a little thinner, the connection between species just a little stronger. The Crixian fleet, what remained of it, surrendered unconditionally. Their leader's final gambit had failed, leaving them with nothing but the hope of mercy from those they had tried to destroy. Hours later, on the observation deck of the luminous dawn, Marcus watched the new nebula shimmer with possibilities. His guardians stood with him, once again in humanoid form. What happens now? Vex asked the question they were all thinking. Marcus smiled. Now we build something new. Not an empire of conquest, but a federation of equals. Dragons and humans, working together with every species willing to join us. Not to rule the galaxy, but to protect it. To guide it. To help it grow. And the power? Thalasser rumbled. The changes to reality itself? We'll face those challenges together, Marcus replied. That's what partnership means. That's what the dragon bond has always been about. As if in response, the nebula flared with new light, its colors rippling across space like the beat of cosmic wings. The war was over, but the true work was just beginning. A new age was dawning, one where the lines between myth and reality, between magic and science, between different species and cultures would blur and blend to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The Dragon Emperor had returned, not to conquer, but to unite. Not to rule, but to serve. And in doing so, he had helped forge a future worthy of both his human heritage and his draconic destiny. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter as Marcus Vale, once a simple soldier and now so much more, looked out at the galaxy that would become his legacy. The story of the Dragon Empire was no longer just a tale of ancient glory, it was a promise of what could be achieved when different peoples came together in trust and friendship. And that was a story worth telling, worth living, worth fighting for, until the last star burned out and the final dragon soared into legend.